Hello, this is Nick with Sonic Perspectives, and you're in for another episode of Talking Perspectives. This is episode number 5, and a little bit later on we're going to be talking about the sea within. But first here we're going to be talking about a really cool band that was recently announced for Cruise to the Edge, Marbin. And with me today I have Mr. Gordon Ireland.
How you guys doing?
I have Mr. Jordan Blum, who writes for Pop Matters, Prog, and Metal Injection, amongst several others. Very prolific. Hi, Jordan.
Hey.
And a special guest from Marbin, we have Danny Markovitch.
Hi. Thank you.
So we're going to be talking about, they have a new album out called Israeli Jazz. It was released by them on March 15th of this year. And the tagline for this is, or for the band, jazz rock fusion like you've never heard before. They have 7 studio albums and are a notorious touring band, which is something I'm going to be talking about later. But Danny, why don't you start and just give us a little bit of background about the band and the new album?
Well, the band is me on saxophone, Danny Marbin on guitar. We also write all the music together. And then we have 2 Chicago guys playing with us right now. It's our current lineup. They've been with us for 2.5 years. And they're on our last 2 albums, Goatman, Wrath of the Dead, and Israeli Jazz, like you said. That's John Adar on bass and Blake Jurassic on drums.
All right. Now, one of the things about the latest album that I really liked was your sax playing. I think it really is what helps set it apart from, it really puts it into that jazz realm as opposed to just the rock realm. And I wanted to ask, is it difficult with the saxophone being such a standout instrument? Is it difficult not taking over the music and kind of blending into what you do?
Well, me and Danny write the music for our instrumentation, our band, right? So we try to make sure that we feature what we all can do. If it's me, him, or our rhythm section, we try to put everybody's best foot forward, I guess.
And now, one thing, and I am not going to go into politics at all here, but you are an Israeli band. The latest album is Israeli Jazz. With everything that's going on, being an instrumental band, do you find it difficult not to have a message with your music or not to have a voice that you might otherwise want to have, like a lot of artists do?
It's funny to talk about it, but I didn't. When we named the Israeli Jazz, we didn't even think about, that's how stupid we are sometimes and clueless. We didn't even think that anybody outside of Israel is gonna give a shit. Can I curse, by the way? Is that fine?
We tried not to, but one or two here and there are gonna kill us.
All right, so I didn't think anybody will care, and Danny didn't think anybody will care. We thought that some people in Israel might be offended that we are taking the name for ourselves. But we never thought about how people that are not Israeli are going to get pissed off, which some of them did, right? We got some really stupid messages on Facebook, and our single of the album, if you can call it a single, we made a video for a song called Israeli Jazz. I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but some people comment free Palestine on our video, and I was like, if you're commenting on a fusions band video, in order to make some political change when you're you're a special kind of loser, at least in my mind, it wasn't the best move. But I would say that even though we obviously, like everybody in the United States, we have our political thoughts and political ideas, we don't feel like us playing music and having all this audience listening to us is some sort of platform to push our political ideas. And so we try to stay away from politics as much as possible. It wasn't, again, Israeli Jazz wasn't a political statement. It was just a silly move by me and Danny that we didn't even take into consideration that anybody's going to kill. But yeah, we are Israeli and we do play jazz. We thought it's funny. And we named the list Israeli sounding, and the list like Israeli sounding, like what people imagine is Israeli music is, and the list jazz is sounding song on the album Israeli Jazz, just because we thought it was pretty hilarious. But nobody got the joke, so the joke is on us.
Yeah, I would say we were talking about a few weeks ago. I'd say a band like Orphanland really covers the sound of the area more than you guys. I would say the jazz side of it really describes your music more than the Israeli part necessarily does.
Well, a lot of people actually, one of the comments that we get a lot on our music is, this is not jazz. Like, people get really upset because we're like, oh, they think they're jazz musicians or they think they're playing jazz, but this is not jazz. Which obviously it is jazz, right? It's we're improvising over harmony. Me and Danny are jazz musicians, like all our heroes are jazz players, and that's where we're coming from. Sonically, I can see why some people get confused, but either way, it's very silly to get mad at it. But some people do. That was one of the reasons why I decided to name it like that.
Now, one of the things that I've always struggled with instrumental music, especially live, is kind of keeping focused with the music, not being a musician myself, and I think that's an important distinction. I find instrumental music to be difficult, and I come from a realm where there's a good bit of it, but certainly not when you get anywhere near jazz, of course, or fusion. That strays a lot towards the instrumental side of things. What do you do, or how do you connect with your audiences and keep them engaged, or is it simply that you're playing the audiences that are more used to that sort of music and that are more receptive to it?
Well, that's a good question, and we did since we started, we had to think about something about how to get people engaged and how to give people some rest in our shows, because our music, especially if you'll see our live show and you will on the cruise, is really intense, and especially live. Like we take live when we play live, we take everything like 10 to 20 to 30, I don't know, to 30 BPM faster when we take on the albums. I don't know if it seems possible, but that was one of the funny things that happened, by the way, when we put out African Shabtai. We have it's a song from our fifth album, Aggressive Hippies, and everybody that saw the video, not everybody, a lot of people saw the video, said that we sped it up, including professional musicians, which if you come see our shows, you'll see how ridiculous it is, because we play it so much faster than the videos now. But what we did in order to keep people's interest, other than we always think about musically how to do it, and to keep our solo engaging and our music engaging, we have something called story time, which is it's a break between the songs, and Danny Marbin is telling like those crazy stories that happened to us on the road. So, for example, we had this running. We went to a barbecue and had a running with this big Nazi guy. He ended up being like a huge fusion fan, and he came to our show, and and it was a huge thing. So he tells like those kind of stories, or like this about this meth head that we saw jump to what we thought was his death, but ended up somehow surviving and escaping into the night. Like all this kind of crazy stuff that happened to us touring 250 days a year since 2011. So that's between, like we do it like 3-4 times a show when we take a break from the music, and then he just tells those stories.
I can't even imagine, because there is no secret, obviously, that you guys have that Israeli backing, that people that have those views are going to know, and you think they would mainly just avoid the shows, but I mean, I can't even imagine coming into a situation like that and what that would be like. But it seems nice that you handled it, and that at least he was a fan.
Oh, the Nazi guy? Oh, he wasn't even... Okay, so he wasn't a fan. We went to a bar. It was just started in 2011. It was in a previous lineup, which both of the musicians were African-American. And we got to the place where we were playing. It was in Carbondale, Illinois, in 2011. And we got there at 10 a.m. to the bar. And there was a lady there playing guitar, and we started talking to her, and she invited us to this wake. I guess a friend of hers died, and they had a barbecue in his honor. So they invited us over. They told us we can eat for free. And we were like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. She took us into a trailer park outside of Carbondale. And we get there, and it was only 3 people. It was the ex-girlfriend of the guy that died. It was an older guy named Bob Honeywell. And there was this lady that brought us, Mandy Jo, that she brought us over. And immediately when we got her, she was like, hey, this is, I don't remember her name, and this is Bob, and I have to go. So she left us with those guys. We just started, playing some music, drinking some beers, eating some barbecue. And then after about 40 minutes, this huge guy covered in swastika tattoos comes out of the trailer, and he says, who the fuck are you, and what the fuck are you doing here? And Danny Marbin was like, we're Marbin, we're a band, we're playing tonight at PK's, which stands for Pizza King. and he's like, "Do you guys play that faggot music?"
Oh my
And
god.
and Danny was like, "We play jazz fusion," and this guy was like, "I love jazz fusion. Do you guys know Alan Holdsworth?" And we were like, "Dude, we toured with Alan." Anyway, we got to talking. He came to the show. Then the other ends, there was some Nazi in Southern Illinois for a poster sign with like two black dudes and two Israeli Jews. So it's pretty funny the
Oh
way
my gosh.
all of it happened. Yeah.
I can't
It makes
imagine. If anything though, it's showing the unification of music, bringing everyone together. Gordon, you had a question?
Yeah, hi Danny. I was thinking, y'all have been around since 2009, or that's when your first album came out, and you put out 7 albums in less than 10 years. What's y'all's writing process? How do you write so much, especially jazz music? I mean, it's so difficult to write well, at least, and y'all do it so good. So I was curious if you could tell me what y'all's writing process is.
Thank you. So actually, if me and Danny could, we would do an album every 2 months. We have so much material and we have such a backlog too that
Wow.
we never have enough. It's changed over the years, but it's basically me and him meet and we write what music we think is good. I guess let me get into it more in details. So the first 3 albums, which is Marbin, Breaking the Cycle, and Last Chapter of Dreaming, we just started touring. Like we didn't tour for the first 2, and then we just started touring when we started recording the 3rd album. So it was kind of like we used the studio as a tool. We were like imagining music that we like, and it was really a lot of it was ethereal, and a lot of it was a little bit. If you listen to the album, some of it is really soft. And then we went to the studio and tried to paint a picture that we like. After that, the 4 albums after that, it was more about we're playing on the road. What we do is playing show most of our time, on this planet, going from place to place, playing shows. And then the writing process became a little bit more focused around playing stuff that we want to play in shows and the stuff that works in shows. So a lot of times we play a set of 90 minutes, and we feel like, okay, we want to get rid of one old song, or we want to do stuff that we didn't do before, and we kind of more gear our writing into something like that. But generally speaking, it's just me and Danny meet, and we try to do something awesome.
All right, and I know Jordan has a question, but I have one quick follow-up on that. Now, with how many albums you guys have done in such a short time, how much does it infuriate you? I don't know if you're even familiar with the band, but the best reference point I have is like a band like Tool, who has all the money and the resources in the world, but can take 10 years and not put out a freaking another album.
I always ask myself this kind of stuff, because what happened if I won the lottery right now? Would I still be touring and doing everything? Or if my parents had money, I guess, a lot of money, and they would just back me up, would I have been playing in dive bars the entire year between 2011 and 2014, right? When almost nobody knew us and almost nobody came to see us, and we would just, play to whoever came in the tiny towns all over the state. Sometimes, like they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. I'm happy that we had to go this route, because we would have never been able to produce that much music and to get that much better progressively, which I think we still do. So I think if you listen to our music and to our albums from the first one to the last one, you can see that me and Danny change our style and become better musicians as time progresses. And I think it's kind of like a life story made it happen, like playing all those shows. It would have never happened if we just sat at home.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the money is not a good thing. Sometimes the money is a bad thing, because why would you go out? Why would you do another album? You're already comfortable.
Yeah.
So I actually think that all the challenges that we had and have at the end, in the big picture, ended up helping us.
All right, Jordan, you had a question?
Well, first, just going back to the the Nazi story, I just wanted to say that it reminded me of the movie Green Room, but luckily it worked out better for you than it did for those people. But yeah, listening to your new album, which I really like, I'm really impressed by it. I wonder how much you guys were influenced, either on this album or in general, by the music of Frank Zappa, because I hear similarities to pieces like Peaches and Regalia and King Kong and Little House I Used to Live In. So I wonder if he in particular was any sort of influence.
You know, it's a little bit hard for me to answer this because both me and Danny grew up listening to Zappa, and we really like his bands and what he's done. But we're not listening to him on a regular basis. I mean, he's not one of the guys that we keep coming back to. Like once in a while, we'll pop something in. And again, I'm not saying that we don't like him because we do like him a lot, and I see where you're coming from. But in a lot of ways, we got to the same conclusions. I think it will be fair to say same conclusions from a different standpoint. Like we didn't start. If you listen to our first 4 albums, were really in a jazz format, which means a melody, a solo, like solos over the same form as the melody, and then a melody out. And after our 4th album, we felt that our show became too guitar heavy, and that our songs had something about them that wasn't like they were either too heavy or too light, like not enough substance or too much. So we started playing with formats. We tried to do the prog format, which is changing up the sections and going to different stuff that's not necessarily Simvet related or obvious. And that's how we got to really what I feel like now is our style. When once we started doing it, we were like, oh my God, that's what we were supposed to do all along. And that's what we did in the last 3 albums. And I think that made us sound a lot more like Zappa. But another thing that I think makes us sound a little bit more like Zappa is maybe, if you know Zappa Live in New York, he has those instrumental tracks, and it's like really rocking with Michael Brecker playing saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
So sonically and vibe-wise, I think that's the closest thing to what we were doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Gordon, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I was just curious. So with such a vast catalog, how do y'all decide on a set list for your shows, or do you mix it up like night after night?
That's another interesting thing that I don't know if people like or don't like about us. But once we finish an album, we stop playing the songs out of the album almost completely and write a completely new set of music.
Oh wow!
So our set right now is almost entirely new, and then we saw like a couple of old ones, so people won't feel like we cheated them out of all the songs they know and want to hear.
I feel like
you're going to get a different set every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you have more freedom to do that with instrumental music than you might otherwise have. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit because you guys are touring machines, and the story you brought up earlier is a perfect example. Coming from the prog world, so many bands are like, we can't go here, we're not getting the guarantees we need, it's so hard to put a tour together. They do 2-3 shows, and you guys, you said it, there was free food and beer, so you were going to show up. And that's such a fantastic attitude, and you've made a good living out on the road. What have the struggles been, or what's the best parts about getting out there and just grinding it out and playing shows?
All right, so the best part is getting better at music, because you can't be a good carpenter if you never make chairs. So, if you want to be a good musician, I think you have to play all the time and not just in your practice room. Playing in your practice room makes people that play too much in their practice room become really weird musicians, and they get obsessed. It's maybe funny for somebody like me to say, but they get obsessed with the technicality of music instead with the music, right? And I know our music is technical, but we never try to do anything to sound technical, and we never try to do anything to put effort on that part of it. Like we don't have parts that Danny does like a tapping moment of the show. You know what I'm saying? Even though Danny can do anything that anybody else can do and better on guitar. We really don't focus on it. We only focus on the music, and I think that's I could never be the musician I am, and Danny would never be the musician he is if we didn't do that much. So that's one of the best. That's probably the best part, because all I want to do in life is be better at saxophone. The other part, I have an awesome life. People always say how hard it is, but I don't know if you read about it a little bit, but between 18 and 21, I was in the IDF. I was in the infantry for 3 years. and then after that, I worked as in a farm. So playing music is much easier. I drive 3 to 5 hours a day, go to a coffee shop, hang out, play some chess online, do some booking, book some shows. When I go at night, play saxophone. It's a great life.
So you're telling me, hold up, you're going to try and sell me on the fact that playing saxophone in a band is somehow more fun than serving in the Israeli army?
Well, I had a good time. Listen, I had a good time serving. I'm just saying it's easier.
All right, Jordan.
Definitely an easier schedule.
Jordan has a question?
Yeah, something I'm always interested in is because you guys have played with so many interesting people over the years, and both in the studio and then on tour, of course, sharing the stage with people. So I wonder if if you had to pick one off the top of your head on the spot, if you had to pick one artist or band to work with live or in the studio that you've yet to, who would you pick?
Right now, I would have loved to tour with Zappa Play Zappa.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that would have been. I think that would have been the best for us.
Now,
yeah. Personally, all the saxophone players that I really like are dead. So, it's like I would like to tour with some of them or play with some of them and battle it out. But since we're all dead, I don't think it's going to happen.
Now, one of the things our fearless leader Joel, that brought all this together, he's been a fan for a long time. But with you guys being announced for Cruise to the Edge, that's what really kind of brought you into our, visual area here, because a lot of us are prog fans, and to see you on that cruise, it's like, ooh, who are they? And so we started checking you out. We started enjoying it. With a crowd like that who, may not be familiar, you're certainly not the biggest band on the bill, what is the key to, making a situation like that work? I know you've probably played lots and lots of festivals before. What's the key to making something like that successful?
Our music is our music. And as I say, we play so much, but I feel like when we're on stage, we feel comfortable enough to just do our thing, and people seem to react to it. I love a prog crowd. We played Prog Day. I don't know if you guys know it.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, so we played Prog Day before, and it was amazing. So we didn't even think about on ourselves as a prog band. What made it happen is the venue where we play in Chicago in 2015, I think it was, before Aggressive Hippies came out. The owner of that venue, which is a big fan of our music, and we've been playing there for years, he called me and he said, listen, I have this band called Haken playing. I want you guys to play on that bill. And I went and listened to them, and I called him out back and I said, listen, I don't think we're really related stylistically. It's super prog music. It's not really our audience. And he told me, listen, it's a great audience. I think it's related. And we did the show, and it was amazing. And then we did Prog Day, and we did some, stuff that's more geared to jazz before and to jam bands before, but I have to say that we never got an acceptance like we did from the prog audience. It's really, it's really a great audience because they care about music, they know instrumental music, they're willing to, they have an open mind. So I'm very, 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 very excited to do Cruise to the Edge. I think it's going to be great.
Now, never want to miss a chance to promote Haken. I will mention that they'll be on the cruise as well. But in any case, one of the cool things about those cruises, I've done several of them before, is just the camaraderie between fans and artists. And a lot of the artists especially will sit in on other shows. Everyone seems to get in on the action. Is there a particular artist or group of artists that you're looking forward to on the cruise that you're planning to enjoy just as a fan while you're there?
I have a few friends that are actually playing. So the first bass player me and Danny played with in Chicago, we have our song Redline, and we named the song after a bar we were playing in Chicago. We had every other Wednesday we have a show there. It's one of the first shows we got in town. And the bass player that used to play with us every other Wednesday is actually playing with District 97, also a Chicago band.
Yep.
So that will be awesome. To see him again, and we haven't seen him in years, and to hang out a little bit and to play again maybe. Haken is always great. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm actually not familiar with a lot of the bands. Again, I'm more of a jazz guy, so I'm just looking to check everything out.
Well, if I can put in my 2 cents after listening to your album and just kind of knowing who's on the cruise, if there's one I would suggest for you personally, I'd say Brand X is probably one that you would really enjoy and should probably try to catch their set.
Oh, I definitely will. Actually, we were supposed to do a tour with them, but it will end up falling through. But I know the manager very well. He's a great guy, and actually that will be fun. And I am familiar with their music.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of our time for this portion. Gordon, did you have any closing thoughts?
Just can't wait to see you come back to the States or play Texas sometime.
Texas, where are you from in Texas?
San Antonio.
San Antonio. We just played San Antonio in January.
What club did you play at or venue?
It was a nice one. It wasn't the Limelight. It was the same booker. I'm trying to remember what's the name of it.
Was it on St. Mary's? It was on the strip there?
Yeah, it was on the, yeah. Let me Marbin.
Well, before we get too bogged down in the details of this particular show.
502 Bow.
Yes.
502 Bow.
Yeah. Let me just say this. We're going to link to Marbin's tour dates in the notes for the podcast because they are, like I said, a live band, and they have a ton of dates coming up, I believe, starting at the beginning of July. Is that correct, or the beginning of August? One of the two.
No, June.
Oh, one of the three. I was almost there. They have a big string of dates coming up through June and continuing on into July. But like I say, they are a live band, so it's definitely something you're going to want to see. They're going to play a lot of nice clubs in your area. They are playing all over, so please go check them out. Danny, any final thoughts from you before we part ways this evening?
No, just thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. I'm usually not much of a talker. We usually let the guitarist do it, but he's going on vacation to Israel. And I hope to see everybody in a show. Even if you live, I know if some people live in the middle of nowhere, believe me, we're going to be there. We play in Wyoming, in Montana, in Idaho. We play like Texas. We played like 10 shows in Texas, all over Texas. There is no place in the United States where we're not playing like 2 hours from there.
Nice.
So look at our schedule and we'll get there.
Does your town have food? Marbin will be there.
That's right.
Well, Danny, thank you very much. Like I say, we're going to post the tour dates. We look forward, and we're hoping to get a big reception on Cruise to the Edge. Thank you very much, and please have a good evening.
You too.
Alright, so that concludes our portion on Marbin. Again, their latest album, Israeli Jazz, came out on March 15th of this year, and you can please go pick that up, and I look forward to seeing them on Cruise to the Edge. And now we are going to switch over to a much-anticipated prog release. And for this, we're going to leave Danny from Marbin. He's left us. But we are joined by a prog master himself, Scott Medina. Welcome back to Talking Perspectives.
Hey, y'all. Good evening.
So, we are going to be talking about The Sea Within, and this is a new project from Marco Minnemann on drums, Jonas Reingold on bass, Tom Brislin on keyboards, Roine Stolt on guitars, Daniel Gildenlow on lead vocals, and Casey McPherson on lead vocals on a few tracks. Now, I'm going to get right to one of my favorite lines from the press release, which is saying, The Sea Within is more of an amalgamation of some serious talents than a regular supergroup. Don't call this supergroup a supergroup. They're more than that. But honestly, it might live up to that. I know a lot of you are going to agree on this. This could certainly be Album of the Year material for me, and I am excited for people to hear it. Scott, what were your initial thoughts?
Amalgam, was that the word?
Amalgamation is the word.
Okay, so this is not a supergroup. This is an amalgamation group.
An amalgamation of some serious talents, yes.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So, well, certainly when we all heard what the lineup was revealed to be last year, I could just hear our collective jaws drop, and there was a lot of excitement immediately for what this band was going to sound like. And now it's come out, and on many levels, I'd say they've delivered the goods. It's it opens with just this really powerful track Ashes of Dawn. And I think that was just a perfect lead-off track because to me, when I was thinking, okay, and probably a lot of people thought, okay, is this going to be like Flower Kings and Pain of Salvation just mashed together? And at least for that track, I'd say yes. It really just fires on all cylinders. It's a kind of take no prisoners sort of track, throw in everything, billion notes a moment, but lots of clear influences in there. It's just a stellar song. So to me, that grabbed me right away and set the bar pretty high. The rest of the album, more or less, with a couple of exceptions, is going in some different directions. So I'm interested in hearing some of your guys' take on it as well.
Yeah, one of the guys I'm going to go to now, we did something interesting for this particular episode. We have intentionally robbed Gordon of his ability to hear the album. We wanted to keep him fresh and keep him just like all the listeners out there, having not heard the album, and kind of get a sense of what his anticipations and what his expectations are, I should say, going into this. So, Gordon, knowing the lineup, what is it that you're looking for in this album?
A lot of strength. There should be some massive songwriting going on in this thing. I'm sure the production values are going to be through the roof as well. I'm kind of curious though, because they said when they go to tour that Daniel's not going to be singing because he's got previous engagements with Pain of Salvation. So I wonder how Casey's going to do on all the songs that he didn't sing on in the studio. That's curious, and now I'm kind of wondering what it was like working with John Anderson as well.
Yeah, well, I think one of the closest things you'll see to this disc is the Anderson Stolt disc that was done a few years ago. That's, no surprise there. But getting on to Casey, he sings on a couple of things, including the eighth track, The Hiding of Truth, the last track. And to me, that track sounds so different from the rest of the album. Not musically, but just because of his vocal delivery. It sounds like it was really written for him. And it really comes across that way to think of how the rest of the album is going to sound, considering they're probably going to do most, if not all of it, when they perform live. It's like, how are these other tracks going to sound? I'm very interested in that myself because, of course, most of the tracks have Daniel singing lead vocals. So that is something I wouldn't say worried about, but I'm like, how different is this going to be from the album? Scott, you had a comment?
Yeah, that's sort of my biggest almost criticism of the album is that there's two incredible lead singers on this album. More to your first question, I don't think it's going to be a problem at all live pulling it off because I could really picture Casey singing just about all of these songs. And I've thought about that already in my head as I'm listening to it, even though Daniel has such a powerful delivery and incredible presence. As I'm listening to it, I'm like, well, could Casey deliver this? And I'm like, yeah, I could see him singing this for sure. So I think live it's going to work out fine. And on the album, it works out great. No matter who's singing, either one of them. And it's in most cases, it's either one of them or the other taking the lead. So they both work out. But my problem is that it's just you're like, I think 4 or 5 songs into the album and you're totally identified with Daniel as the singer. And then this track Goodbye comes on and it's like, whoop, suddenly it's Casey singing. And it just kind of changes the whole atmosphere for me. And not that Casey's any better or worse than Daniel. It's just like, wait, are we listening to the same group all of a sudden? So that for me, yeah, it's just, I kind of wish they had been able to integrate the tracking a little bit better. Maybe putting Casey's first song as like the second or third track on the album or something like that. It's just, it does make you scratch your head a little bit, like, why is Casey singing 3 songs on the album and they're like later down? It's a little strange in the tracking that way.
To me, it's a catch-22 because on one hand, it's like, oh my God, Daniel's doing such a fantastic job on this album. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, I know Casey's going to be singing live. I kind of wish he would have sang more on the album so it was all familiar. But yeah, it's one of those things where you can say you don't win either way, but at the same time, it's such a fantastic album that I think, hey, we've won. So, at the end of the day, what does it matter? But Jordan, we haven't heard your just general thoughts on the album. Why don't you give us a little bit?
Yeah, I agree with Scott that my first reaction to hearing about the lineup was that it was going to be like the Flower Kings meets Pain of Salvation. And I agree with Scott that in some ways it is. But I was actually surprised with how much it doesn't feel like that. It feels a lot more fresh than it, I think. In some ways, it reminds me of Beardfish more than either of the other two. But what really struck me is, I mean, I love it all. I'm really impressed by all of it. But what really struck me was the bonus disc, which has 4 other songs that aren't really, I mean, ask them why they left them off or didn't include them. But what struck me is especially the last 2 songs on the bonus disc, Time and Denise, really make me think of the last Pain of Salvation album and The Passing Light of Day, which is also, I don't know if it's officially or unofficially, but it is Remedy Lane Part 2 as well. Because it's just like Daniel's like trademark, I don't know, like emotion and just like that feeling of regret and nostalgia that he captures so well is really permeates those 2 songs. So I was really taken aback by how much those sounded like sort of more colorful and dense Pain of Salvation songs.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, I own in my collection probably more InsideOut releases than any other label. That being said, the label tends to go through phases. Years and years ago, they had the live release phase. They currently have a box set career retrospective phase going on, but they also seem to have a bonus disc phase going on. Where they want to have a few leftover tracks. I mean, they just did it with Spock's Beard, and I know 1 or 2 others that I can't think of off the top of my head here, but they're just a label that seems that get these ideas, and it's like, okay, all our artists, you're now doing this. And but at the end of the day, with Spock's Beard and with this, the bonus disc is fantastic, so really we're all benefiting from that, I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's I think it's going to be hard for me to separate them when I go to review them, or even in my mind, it's like 12 songs of the same album, and it is, but I don't know why, like, I can't tell of any, like, thematically or sonically, I don't know if there's any real anything to make the song separate into 8 and 4. They all flow together so well as one.
Yeah, well, and the one difference between this and some of the others, too, is the first disc is 77 minutes long, so it's not like they could have fit it all on one disc.
It's more like just 2.
Yeah. But, and then again, and that's the thing. The Flower Kings especially have done so many double albums. So, why not make this a double album? Why make it, this main disc and call the other one a bonus CD? Just like with the previous releases, the bonus CD comes with every version of the album. You cannot buy a version of this album that doesn't come with the bonus CD. So it's like it really almost is disc 2, but they refuse to call it that in this day and age, it seems. So, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, you're right, Nick. That is just what they did with the Spock's Beard, too. If there's not an option to not get the bonus disc, then that begs the question, okay, well, why didn't you just make it a double disc? And instead, especially if a lot of the songs on the bonus one are as strong. And I don't think that Casey sings at all on the bonus disc. Is that right?
No.
I believe so, although I've kept most of my listening to the main disc. And here's an interesting thing. It's taken the internet by storm. Apparently, when I say bonus disc, some people out there hear second CD. It's a whole big controversy going on right now.
Well, as long as it's on the record, it's okay.
Please tell me someone gets what I'm
I'll get it on
referring to
vinyl,
there, that joke wasn't completely lost.
I thought the comment was made about the Denise track earlier. To me, actually, that's the one track that I kind of wish wasn't on this project, because it does feel so much like a more of a Pain of Salvation tune. It's really intense.
Yeah.
Lyrics and delivery, and I don't really think it fits in with most of the rest of the See Within album, and it'd be a great Pain of Salvation track. So that was the one point that I was like, this is going a little too much in just one direction.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Now, it goes to show like how diverse it is and how much it's not what you may expect from a supergroup like this.
Now, one thing I will say, we're talking about the general sound of the album before, and there's definitely times where it calls back to me to the Flower Kings, especially Daniel's era in the Flower Kings. There's times that I hear some Car Mechanic for sure, that I can think, the old Anderson Stolt record, certainly. But I'd say when I got to track 4, An Eye for an Eye for an Eye, is when it really hit me like, wow, this is something I really haven't heard in any of those bands before. It's up-tempo. And one of the things that I swear it's not a great comparison, but there's a couple of riffs, especially early on, and a couple of vocal melodies that, like, this has the groove of a Coheed and Cambria song, which to me was like, this is so cool because it's done. It doesn't sound like Coheed at all, but it has some of that groove in there. And It ends up being probably my favorite track just because it does really stand out to me. Does anybody else have a particular affinity for any of the particular tracks?
No, because I haven't got to hear it yet. Thanks.
Okay, let me.
I'm getting to hear how great it is, and I don't even get to hear it yet. So
Don't
I really
worry, we'll
like-
take care of you after this is over.
all right.
I really like the broken chord, the penultimate song for the actual album. I
And
just find it
also
really,
by
like-
far the longest.
Yeah, the one
Yeah,
epic
it
there.
is. But I like the reprises through it, and it's just very emotional to me. It's one of those things where it's such a subtle melody, but it grabs you, I think. And again, the performances are just so fantastic.
Yeah, so for our listeners, that's a 14-minute track. It's the only song really that even comes close to that time frame. And this is the only song on the album that does have both Casey and Daniel singing lead at separate parts. Casey comes in at the second half of the song. So did you guys feel that it, as a mini epic there, does it really hold together for you?
I certainly thought it was just as strong as everything else on the album. I don't think it drags, which is, to me, the main measuring stick of an epic is, do I feel it's worth the 14 minutes? And I don't really see it being cut down. I was happy with it. Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be completely honest, one of my hesitations with this album was like, I love what Roine does, and I love the Flower Kings, but I sometimes find it hard to connect with the songwriting in the Flower Kings. I kind of see it more, or hear it more as like colorful, dense music. But here, I think it's a good blend of the two, because the melodies and the lyrics definitely stick with me as much as anything going on in the arrangement. So
This is the
yeah,
one
it
that
flows as well.
features
Yeah.
John Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, Gordon, you're the one we tortured here, so let me bring it back to you. Who are you most familiar with going into this album?
Probably the Stolt stuff, yeah. Of course, John Anderson from growing up, but Daniel, yeah, this Pain of Salvation stuff is a little bit more up my speed, but they're all great musicians, so it's,
So the one thing I would say on this album for Roine Stolt that sets it apart from Transatlantic, from the Flower Kings, is in both those bands he has a very distinct guitar style, and I think it is actually reeled in and streamlined a little bit on this album. Not to say that it's more typical, but I think that the usual Stolt flair is tuned down just a little bit to help streamline the songs a little bit and to fill in that role of a more typical guitar player. Would anybody else agree with that? Am I off base with that?
No, now that you mention it, I totally see where you're coming from with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that or hear that too. It's interesting. There's some places on the album, like the second track, They Know My Name, and then the next one, A Little of the Void, where there's, to my ears, almost too much restraint in playing. Like on They Know My Name, there's this, it's a very moody piece, keyboard based. And then there's this instrumental section that Roine could have just hit a killer solo on, and yet there's nothing. And he comes in at the very end of the song, but I think only with a fraction of what I would have thought he would have played, and probably would have preferred that he had played.
Now, one thing I would say too, I think everyone shines pretty much at some point through it, just to some degree or another. I'd say that if there's one thing that was subdued or that I didn't see him shining quite as much through was Marco Minnemann. I look at his playing, and especially like Steven Wilson, and to think how he cuts through the oh my God. To think how he cuts through the mix, that's the word I'm looking for, with his playing. It really seemed, I don't know if it's because of how they sonically did the album, but I'd say, he isn't quite as noticeable on the album. Not to say it's not good, but I don't think he's as noticeable as he is on other projects. Would anybody comment on that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I kind of forgot for a while that it was him on the drums. Saving the opening track, Ashes of Dawn. He's a monster on that one, and a couple of others. But yeah, there were several points I thought, oh wait, Marco's drumming. I got to pay more attention because he hasn't been grabbing me by the lapels here lately.
He played on The Raven That Refused to Sing, right?
Yes, he did, and Hand Cannot Erase.
Yeah. So just by that comparison, of course, it depends on what the rest of the arrangement calls for. But yeah, it seems like it's very good. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's not as sort of dynamic and I don't know, and I don't know, exclusive. I guess it's more of just common, but fitting, but common.
Yeah, and despite all this, I know we're hitting on some criticisms here, but I cannot understate enough or overstate enough. I'm good with words. How good the songwriting is on this album, and how, despite these little picky things, I really do think it's going to be a contender for album of the year. I to me, that the big top-notch supergroup, the one that will always stand apart from all others, is transatlantic. It is the joining of several forces that just come together to make something so incredibly beautiful. They have two of my favorite albums of all time. They are the top-tier supergroup for me. And although the press release says this is not a supergroup, to me it is the closest competitor to transatlantic that I've seen, and especially people like Portnoy have put together a lot of supergroups. But to me, the potential here is pretty out of this world. I really look forward to seeing these guys live. Are any of you guys planning to be over at the initial shows, either in Germany or Cruise to the Edge this time around?
I'm not. One of my goals in my life is to go to Cruise to the Edge at some point, but as of now, I don't think I can manage that.
I'll be at the Cruise to the Edge show for sure. And I don't know, is Daniel supposed to play at the Night of the Prague? Does anyone know?
As far as I know, he is not touring on the first tour at all, Night of the Prague or otherwise. Now, one thing I definitely want to say about the vocals on this album, because I found it very interesting, when you had the Flower Kings, who did 2 records when Daniel Gildenlow was in the band, one of the biggest differences I think you'll hear here is with the Flower Kings, it was like, okay, here are Flower Kings vocals that Daniel happened to stand in on. Whereas with this album, it really sounds like Daniel was a driving force behind, a lot of the vocal melodies and a lot of the delivery, and I think the album really stands out because of it. I know a lot of people don't like, especially like the Road Salt albums, but between those 2 albums and The Passing Light of Day, if you take, just that real passionate delivery that he had on those, I think it can be applied to this album very similarly, and it's one of the standouts for me. Did anybody else get that vibe?
I totally did. I think Daniel is one of the best vocalists working in the genre, one of the most distinctive ones. And yeah, especially like the song in The Passing Light of Day, which is 15 minutes. And if handled any other way, I think it would become very it is kind of monotonous, but because of the way he delivers it with such passion and the way he kind of like whispers and enunciates, and it's just, yeah, it's totally a crucial performance by him on this, and draws comparisons between that and this album.
Yeah, and certainly, I've heard comments about him seeing, overly dramatic or stuck up or snobby or what have you. I don't care. He does what he does very, very, very well. And yeah, I'm not saying snobby in the personal sense. I mean in his delivery and how he emotes things, live and all that. But the man does it so well that I could never, ever complain about how he does his thing.
To me, that's a drawing force for Pain of Salvation and for his performance on this new album. I love his emotion and delivery, and maybe I'm one of the few, but I love the Road Salt albums too because of that. And so I think he totally delivers on this, and you can definitely imagine that he's writing the lyrics and the performance that he's giving.
You think of a song like Sisters from Road Salt 1. It's like it's acting, it's theatrical without being too over hyperbolic with it, but it's more than just like singing a song as a job, clearly.
All right, so let's get back a little bit. Like I say, we tortured Gordon. We didn't let him hear the album. Let's end getting back to him for a little bit. And Gordon, why don't you just fire off some general questions about the album, things we haven't covered, and let us know from the outside perspective what you want to hear.
Would the long songs carry live, or do you think that it's more based on just the studio creating the atmosphere for, what they're trying to accomplish on the album as far as like textures and stuff like that, or will that keep people interested when they're playing live?
Well, and one thing I will mention is we had said that there is the 14-minute track. However, after that on the main disc, the next closest is 7 minutes. So really, nothing is too long. And that being said, although not everything is super up-tempo, there's not like a lot of ballady material or anything like that on it. It's going to move live. I don't think there's going to be any problems with this material transferring to the stage. And one thing, Casey is a great emotive live singer as well. He sounds completely different. but I don't think the material will have any trouble carrying live. Next question.
Who would you like to see him with? What kind of Dream Tour would you like to see them paired up with?
Ooh,
like someone like Sons of Apollo or something like that, or
well, I don't think
something...
that's the best pairing. Certainly, Jordan.
Well, just to offset each other.
I've gotten enough hatred on the internet for my opinion of Sons of Apollo, which to me, Sons of Apollo represents totally sufficient textbook run-of-the-mill progressive metal. Like if you had a picture, if you had like a one sample of what progressive metal is by default, it's Sons of Apollo.
And wait 1 second, I want to mention this because this is perfect, and it's something I highlighted in the notes here. Because when Sons of Apollo came out, one of the things that they bragged about is that they were only in the studio for it was a week or 2 weeks to put this album together, and they wore it as a badge of honor. And I get where they're coming from on that end of things, but on the completely other end of things, the bio here talks about how, let's see here, most of the material here was really band compositions. No, that's not the part. Oh, the entire recording situation took about 6 months. So they don't talk about, the shortness as far as the main bulk of the writing. They talk about, hey, this was a 6-month process, which to me, I do really enjoy the Sons of Apollo record. I'm not going to join you in some of your criticisms of that. I do agree that it is a little generic, but, I generally do enjoy it as well a lot. But, I like that this band, doesn't have anything like that in their release. It's more about, the longevity and all the people involved and all the different influences in that. And frankly, I would rather have that. And to me, I know it's apples and oranges, certainly, but I definitely prefer the See Within album to Sons of Apollo. And I don't know if there's anyone here that would disagree with that.
No way.
Scott?
No, I wouldn't disagree with that, although I definitely like the Sons of Apollo album more than you guys.
To be fair, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. I'm not hating on it.
I gave it 6.5.
Jeff Scott Soda's one of my favorite singers. So.
But
I've always
helps.
considered Jeff Scott more of an AOR singer than a prog metal guy. So,
which that's we could have a whole nother discussion on Sons of Apollo. Trust me on that.
Yeah.
But why don't we gave one to Jordan, one to me? Why don't you give us a question for Scott there, Gordon?
Okay, so out of all the guest musicians they had, what were you most excited about hearing on there?
Well, the interesting thing is that they have a few guests on it, but it's not as many as you may think. It's really the most surprising, really, to me actually, was Rob Townsend playing the soprano sax on the lead-off track, Ashes of Dawn. I was suddenly, you have so much going on already, and you're just getting exposed to this new band with these killer players, and suddenly there's a saxophone thrown in there with a great solo. It's really over the top as an intro to the album. So that was a really pleasant surprise. I didn't see that coming.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I will add to this, the other guests are John Anderson and Jordan Rudess. Certainly the bigger names, but to me, I agree, the sax solo was definitely the much better contribution on the album. Totally agree.
Yeah, me too.
And then one thing that we should probably talk about, too, Roine Stolt, of course, plays guitar on the album, but aside from some backing vocals, does not sing a lot, which I know they have 2 fantastic lead singers, but, that is something a bit unexpected given how much he does sing on other stuff. Jordan, do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
I think I have no idea, but I think it could be that if he sang as well, it might bring too many comparisons to just it being like the Flower Kings under a different name almost. Even though clearly it wouldn't be. It just has like 2 members or 3 members with Daniel, but that's my guess. But I love Daniel's vocals and I love Casey's vocals on it. I don't think it's losing anything by not having Roine to sing. I think it's like the elephant in the room that he's not singing a little bit. It's surprising to me.
Yeah. Well, he's singing a little bit, just not lead.
Yeah. But yeah, like not even a little bit, or not even a more substantial amount of lead. It surprises me.
I wonder if, given the fact that he had 2 fantastic vocalists too, if he just kind of wanted a break from it. He's sang a lot of vocals in a lot of bands over the years. I wonder if he was just happy being a guitarist for a while.
I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's also the possibility that they tried him singing some lead vocals, and then later in the mix decided to sub it out for Daniel or Casey too.
Yeah, Yeah, always possible. Like you said, like Jordan was saying before, it's not that the album is missing anything. It's just weird to have Roine all over the album, but not on vocals.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tom Brislin also contributes some to the vocals. Sometimes you can pick him out and backup vocals as well. So it's definitely a strong vocal group.
Yeah, I was really surprised that Daniel is on it as much as he is.
Yeah, I was too.
All right, well, that kind of brings us full circle on this. Why don't we close with some final thoughts on the album? Jordan, give us your conclusion.
Well, as you said, I could definitely see it as a contender for Album of the Year, or at least top 5 for me at this point. And again, I'm just really, I don't say proud, like I had anything to do with it, but I'm impressed that it is more than just The Flower Kings meets Pain of Salvation. There is a little bit of that there too, but it feels more organic and original and new, I think, than just Meet Demi is that. That's a little reductive, I think. So I'm just glad that they really pushed themselves to do something new with this project.
All right, Scott?
It's an exciting project, and I agree that it's nice to see that they've stretched themselves out. It doesn't go in all the predictable areas you might think that it is. There is some of that, and I think it's very successful when it does what we expect it to do. But then the other areas are going to challenge people, and you have to really sit with this a little bit longer and let it sink in. So bravo for going unexpected routes.
Yeah, and I will echo what both of you said. I do like that it draws some comparisons to the individual players' older works, but I love that it stands on its own. I will again say that to me it is the best amalgamation of talents I have seen since Transatlantic. So that is a huge compliment coming from me. And I, kind of part of my decision in going to Night of the Prague this year was the fact that I would get to see them, and this is before I ever heard the music. I'm just happy that the hopes I had for the band, have lived up to those expectations and the quality of the album delivered here. And now I'm super excited to see them. Before I was excited about the lineup, now I'm excited about the material. So I am super thrilled with this album. Gordon, everything you've heard here today, what now, after hearing all this, are you most excited for about the album?
For you to send me the damn music. No, I want to go on that experience that you guys have already had. It sounds like it's a great album from start to finish. It really builds up and takes you somewhere. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me again on Talking Perspectives. I want to remind everyone to please like us on Facebook, on Twitter, to subscribe so you get podcasts like Talking Perspectives along with interviews and some audio reviews and things like that. Follow us on YouTube. Do all the cool social media stuff the kids are doing these days. That would make us happy. Want to thank Danny earlier. And, of course, now we had Scott, Jordan, and Gordon. Thanks for hanging out tonight, talking about it. This is The Sea Within and Marbin. Everyone, please have a good night.